In this video, we're going to take a look at the pixel editor and how to start working with graphics. But before we start working with graphics, I want to begin to explain a little bit about how NES handles graphics. First, we want to talk about backgrounds, and we talk about sprites, and we want to talk about palettes and subpalettes. In order to talk about these abstract concepts, I'm going to open up a paused screen from Mystic Origins. This is the first screen from the first NES game that I ever built, and I'm still working on its proper game, Mystic Searches, which is the magnum opus that started this whole project. So if I hit Control P in Messin, it brings up the Picture Processing Unit Viewer, the PPU Viewer. And what I see right now is I see basically all the data that is loaded to the name tables. That's the actual thing I see on the screen. So this is the name table I'm seeing right now in the game. So this is the game itself, and this is what I'm actually seeing. This is actually what happens if you go to the menu bar in Mystic Origins. These are the graphics that are loaded, and in fact these tiles change because the character data changes when you go there, but you can kind of see the layout here. Let's take a look at a couple of things that are important. Okay, these are the graphics that are loaded. This is the space that you get for your sprites, and this is the space you get for your background for any given screen. So what we've done with NESmaker is we have split this up into basically an area for character object data, game object data, and an area for monster data. And in NESmaker, unlike this, it actually splits it right in half. So with this, with Mystic Origins, it was actually split where this is all the character, and then your power-ups and things like that were down here. Now those are combined in the first half, and monsters and NPCs and things like that are in the second half. And this is all the tile data for your screen. So you notice we always have HUD data loaded. We also have path data loaded, which is how we made these sort of complex paths using minimal graphics. And then you have graphics that are loaded on a screen by screen basis. This is a full tile set, and these two rows right here are a screen specific tile set. But before we talk about that, let's take a look at the palette viewer. This is the hardest thing to sort of understand about NES when you're first starting to work with it. When you create art assets for the NES, unlike a game today you make a bitmap and you put it in your game and you have a graphic for your game, and you're saving the color information with that bitmap. But NES doesn't work like that. It's just reading a bunch of values. It's just reading a bunch of digits and then expressing those on the screen. It's pushing those through these palettes that are currently, these are the palettes that are currently loaded. You can see them in the screen right now. So these first 4 rows here are my background tile palettes, and these last 4 rows are for my sprites. And it's pretty easy to see, these trees use this sub palette, these 4 colors right here, and these stone features use this feature right here, and the water uses this sub palette right here, and my HUD uses this sub palette right here, whereas my player uses this sub palette here, and then this guy uses this one here, and this guy uses this one here. You can kind of see what's going on, and so what you'll notice is that the NES graphics, you can only have 3 colors plus a transparent color for a single 8x8 tile area. You can only have 3 colors plus a transparent color, which will be completely invisible for a sprite, for an actual sprite that's being drawn to the screen. So for instance, you see that my character sprite is only skin tone and this dark blue character and red. That's this right here, skin tone, dark blue, and red. And that's all the colors that I get. And it's not just the fact that these are the only colors that you can have on the screen. Each little element can only have one of these rows. So I wanted you to see that before we started talking about the pixel editor, so you understand how palettes worked. And let's set up a palette before we do anything else. We're going to look at this example again probably later down the road in these tutorials, but for right now, let's set up some palettes. So I'm going to go to Palettes, and where it says Palette Groups, I'm going to create a palette group. I'm going to right click on Palette Groups, and that's going to bring up something user palette group. If I right click on that, I can rename it, and I'll just call it My Pals 1, my first palettes or whatever. All right, and if this was a grassland, I could call it Grassland Palettes, and if it was Underworld, I could call Underworld Palettes. Now I'm going to open up all palettes, and here's all of my palettes that I can use for this game. I'm going to click on the first one, and I could actually make some edits right here. I'm just going to pick obscure colors. I'm just going to sort of bounce around here and pick like a purple and a, let's make this gray there, gray and yellow and purple, and that's these are the palette colors. I'm going to make that light gray so it stands out from the dark gray. So there's a palette that I have, and what I can now do is I can drag that and drop it into my palette group, and there it is in my palette group. I can change it here, I can change it here, or I can make changes to it in any interface where I see the palettes displayed. So like when I'm working on a tile graphic, and I see the palettes on the side, I can actually make changes to it there, and it'll update in all those places. So now that I've made a palette, pretty easy to make palettes, let me open up my pixel editor. And you can see my palette shows up right here. So this is the pixel editor. This is where you can create graphics. There's a lot of ways that we can start working with graphics. We can draw new graphics. We can bring in external graphics from other, from something we made in Photoshop or GIMP or even Microsoft Paint. Let's take a look at all those things. Let's start with a new blank canvas. If I went to pixel editor, new BMP, and made like a 16 by 16 tile, you'll almost never do it this way, but let me show it to you just in case. So what I've just made is I've made a 16 pixel by 16 pixel tile. If I want to actually see the pixels, I can click on show pixel grid. Now I can actually see the pixels. And now I can start using common drawing tools to create a sprite. So like if I want to make a happy face, I'm going to make a happy face. I have to choose a color or a color over here. I'm going to pick this gray color, and we're going to see something strange happens. That is not gray, is it? So that is not a happy face. That should be a frowny face because I said I wanted it that color. So what's happening right now? Okay. Well, remember when I showed you in Messin, I showed you the Mystic Origins, and there was 3 colors. We need to force the graphics to be 3 colors. So the way that NESmaker handles it is it makes a file that is a black, red, green, blue file. That's a black, red, green, blue bitmap file. So no matter what colors you want it to be, we need to conform it to that. And that will give NESmaker the values, not black, red, green, blue, but 0, 1, 2, and 3. So 0, 1, 2, and 3. All right. And then what happens is these values get pushed through the palette that's loaded. So red is going to become gray, and green is going to become yellow, and blue is going to become purple because those are the colors I have loaded. And if I want to see what it would actually look like in game if I had that this palette loaded, I can go to enable palette translation mode. And now it's gray. And you can see that my colors up here have changed. Now I can actually draw with these colors. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind. Don't forget, this is still drawing a black, red, green, blue bitmap file. The only way it's going to show up these colors is if this palette happens to be loaded at that given time. But what happens, for instance, if I have a second palette? So I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to make a new palette. And I'm going to and I can name these palettes too. Oops. It just asked me to save that graphic, and because it was a new graphic. If I made a new palette and I made it teal and orange and purple, and I can right click and rename these two. Palette TRB for teal, red, and purple, and I can actually drag that into my pals as well. Now let me go back to my pixel editor, and if you ever have this happen, if it stretches out, all we have to do is hit the force square aspect ratio until we see that square aspect ratio. And if I put that through this palette, we know what's going to happen. It's going to look gray and yellow, and let me make some hair that's purple. Awesome. But what happens if I have it loaded through? Now it's going to push it through these colors. So again, when you're making NES graphics, you're not actually making graphics with color information. You're making graphics with bit data information, and that data is being pushed through whatever palette you currently have loaded. Okay, so that's a little bit of an explanation about how colors are working, and how this black, red, green, blue mode is actually working. This is actually what you're going to see when you're making tiles. You're almost never, like I said, going to go to Pixel Editor and new BMP. You're going to work with existing tile sets and existing graphics, even if you're creating from scratch. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to save this at all. I'm going to open up my background CHR00. This is the tile set for my first background graphics. I'm going to open that up. And now I can see I've got a little, I accidentally clicked right there as I was opening that. So I'm just going to paint that black. Let's pretend I'm going to make a grassland game. So I'm actually going to rename, I'll do that later. I'm going to rename that grassland, and I'm going to change the colors, and I can change them here too. I'm going to get like green, and I'm going to get a dark green, and I'm going to get a brown color. And this is good for grass, and it's good for trees, and it's good for bushes. So it's going to serve a lot of needs for my this first graphic. Now I can actually do a lot of things. First of all, I can look at grid in 8x8 tiles. Now, objects are usually made up of 8x8 tiles, but tile sets, assets are made up of 16x16 tiles. So I can look at either or both of those grids, and I can toggle them off really easily. And again, if I want to see the actual pixels, I can see the actual pixels. I can zoom in, I can zoom out. And I've got my standard drawing tools, and I'm just going to make this really easy. I'm going to zoom in once, and I'm going to scroll to the top left corner, and I want to create just grass. And there's two ways that I can do this. I can either get the rectangle tool, choose my green color, and I want to actually see the color that I'm painting. So I'm going to enable palette translation, and I can click and drag and make a rectangle. That's one way I could do it. I'm going to hit Control Z, or I could use this tile fill tool, not the first bucket, but the second bucket, and that will actually fill all of a similar color for whatever I click on within that tile. So that's the other way that I could do it, is, and that's make sure that it's actually just staying within the tile. So this is going to be a grass tile. I'm going to turn off my pixel grid, and I could dot it with a couple of dark spots just to give it a little character like that. And great. So I'm going to hit save. And now that has saved over the top of my first tile set's bitmap. So if I go to load file again, take a look, there it is. And remember, it's creating a black, red, green, blue file, not a green file. The green is because of the palette. It's going to push those values through the palette. And we can see there it is. It's that red corner. Okay, so that's how I could make a graphic. Now let's look how I can import a graphic. Let's pretend that you make a graphic outside of here, and you wanted to open it up and then paste it into this tile set. I've got some graphics already for you. If you go to load BMP file, if you go to your NESmaker folder and you go to tutorial assets, if you go back to the from beta and go to graphics, you're going to see a tree graphic. Let's load that in. Okay, so now we have to select this. And I've got a couple different selection tools. I've got a selection tool where I can just select, arbitrarily, or I've got this tile selection tool where as I click, it's actually selecting just based on the entire tile. Let's do that. So let's click and drag and get from top left to bottom right. I'm going to hit Control C, and now I'm going to open up my tile set again. And I could hit Control V, but that arbitrarily places it. What I want to do is I want to put it exactly in this tile starting as the top left corner. If I hit Control Shift V, it places it and it locks it to the corner. And that's what I want. And hey, this looks like it already matches. It's green and whatever. It doesn't. This actually is not that same color green. And don't forget, we don't want a green graphic. We want a red, green, and blue graphic. And this is none of those things. I mean, it is green, but it's the wrong green. So we need to translate this into red, green, blue. And that's how we're going to get this non-NESmaker graphic to work in NESmaker. So what I'll do is I need to figure out, okay, what do I want to be what color here? You know what? I could do this. This is a great idea. I could make this and this the same color, and this will be a lighter green, and this would be the brown. So I'm actually going to make a second sub palette for the top part of this tree, and I'm going to use this for the top, and I'm going to use this for the bottom with this green and brown. So I'm going to use my, I'm going to use my global color change tool and get brown and click here. and it turned it all blue, which is what I want. But if I look at it through palette translation, it looks this color brown now. So now it actually does conform to the needs of NESmaker. And if I want to see, hey, did I get all the tiles yet? I'm not sure if I got them all. I can look at show bad pixels. And you can see I still have a lot of bad pixels here, but the trunk went away because the trunk actually does conform to the red, green, blue now. Okay, so now I want the grass and this part of the tree to be this color green. So I'm going to fill all that. And you could see it made all that. And there we go. And if I show bad pixels, okay, I only have that left. The problem is this dark color green is not going to work for me. If I do it, check this out. This is not exactly what I want. It looks backwards. That should be the lightest part. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. I'm going to make a second sub palette, and I'm going to make the same green color for the ground in the same spot, but instead I'm going to use a lighter color green here, and I'm going to use my global color change for the top. And now when I make an asset, I'm going to use this tile set for the bottom, or this palette for the bottom, and this palette for the top. So that's how I can easily sort of start cranking out graphics. I can import graphics. And if I have a graphic that's too many colors, like let's pull in a graphic that's too many colors, I'm going to save that. I'm going to go to Open. I'm going to go to NESmaker 4.10, Tutorials, from Beta, Graphics, and I'm going to bring in this one that's just called Tiles. And this graphic is a great one to use. I'm going to use my tile select, Control C. I'm going to open back up my tile set, and I'm going to paste it right here, Control Shift V. And obviously way too many colors. It's got pink, dark gray, light gray, black, red, and dark red. And I need to get it to 3 colors to make this work. So how can I best express this in 3 colors? Ground is going to be green. It's going to be grass. The spikes I have to make all gray, and the red is going to be all one color red. Don't worry about the black, because the black is always going to be our transparent color. So we're going to see through this graphic to a background, and that background is black. So anywhere that's black, it'll look black. If I were to change this to, say, blue, it would all look that. I guess that's more of a periwinkle. Let me come back here. All right, so let's make this all gray. No, I don't want to use that because I do want that blood red. So I'm going to redundantly use green, and I'm going to use my global color change on the pink. I'm going to make a gray, a light gray. All the grays I'll make gray. And then I'm going to make a red, and I'm going to make all the reds red. And now let me check my show bad pixels. There's no bad pixels. They all work. So now we've looked at how to create graphics, how to import graphics, and how to even import and work with graphics that are just way too color dense for the NES to actually use. And hopefully that gives you an idea of how to manipulate and create some tile sets and create some graphics. Now let's pretend you wanted to work on a player based on a tile set that you've already gotten that's already in red, green, blue format. It's already the right size. We're going to use the adventure game tile set for our main object. So I'm going to open it up, and I've actually stored it for you guys. If I go to open, if I go to NESmaker, tutorial assets, from beta, you're going to see adventure tile sets game objects. I'm going to bring that in, and this is already a game object tile set. And you know what? I don't like these colors at all, but I don't want to change anything over here. Why? Because these are my background palettes. If I change this and say, oh, I want my character to be red, and I'm going to change this to red, I didn't just change, I changed my pals one. I changed this palette. I changed the palette that's going to be used to make my ground and my grass and my tree that I just made. So let me put that back to where it was. I think that's where it was. I want to work with the object palettes. So all I'm going to do is click on this button, and that's going to take me to my object and my monster palettes. All right. So I'm going to make my monster palette 0 my player palette. And now I'm affecting, and I'm going to rename it, and now I'm affecting the object palettes, not those tile palettes. And I'm going to make the background this shadow color, and his face this peach color, And I kind of like them being red. Sure, I like that. I haven't made any adjustments to this. I recommend doing this because this has the graphics that we're going to use going forward, and it's also got something for the sprite zero hit that we're going to create. So let's just use this, and let's say that we're happy with it. I can't just save it because this is going to save it back to where I opened it from, right? So what I need to do is save as. And now I'm going to replace my game objects tiles with that graphic. Save, yes. And now if I look at it, if I wanted to open it and I looked at my game objects, I'd see I've got that tile set. And don't forget, it's not actually red and blue. It is black, red, green, blue, pure colors that's being translated through 0, 1, 2, 3, that color, right? So awesome. That's a great look at how to start creating graphics in the pixel editor and how to bring in graphics from external editors like Photoshop, GIMP, or even Microsoft Paint, and how to work with graphics that somebody already optimized for NESmaker. And hopefully that gives you a good indication, a good starting point to creating some graphics for your game.